Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 here at the Health and Tea event with Dr. Lee. And then I'm Michael Harney, and you are?
Elise Harney.
And we are with Harney and Sons Tea. And it was your husband and Dr. Lee that were such good friends, right, Mom? Not that I'm a bad friend of Dr. Lee, but...
No, my husband and Dr. Lee, and it's been a great privilege to know Dr. Lee from the beginning of his crusade to use food to help us beat disease. It's
It is. You know, and we were. My mother had his book, and with the book, Eat to Beat Disease. Well, how did you organize it?
I had all paper clips on all the ends of the chapters where it tells you what foods to look for and not, to be sure you have everything, and depending on what you're concerned that. But the thing that I do want to say, which I think is very important, because of this COVID, we have become so much more aware. For years, we just have to get smart enough to
listen to Mother Nature.
And I
wanted to point out here, I don't know if the good doctor knows this, but this, I was looking for my copy and then I read it up here, and it's the advanced copy. So I've been proud to be associated from before it was printed with the Eat to Beat Diseases. So Dr. Lee, thank you for inviting us here.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here among friends, and I have to say it's been a pleasure and an honor for me to not only have come to know Harney Teas for so many years, and known Elise and John on a personal level, but to really see the family and all of your activities surrounding tea continue to thrive. I mean, if there's one tea group that cannot be put down by a pandemic, that's going to be Harney and Son Teas. So I'm really excited for us to be able to do this together. I normally talk about eating to beat disease, and today I think we're talking about drinking to beat disease, because tea is something that is even more natural to consume than eating food, because it's just, we got to stay hydrated.
Absolutely. That's what they say. Tea is water is the mother of tea, and so that's very good. The thing I like about it also is that we're going to talk about the various teas and their benefits, which you're going to talk about. But the thing that I like about it is that it turns out that most times the teas that are considered the most healthy by you are the ones which are the best tasting. Mm-hmm. So nature, as my mother was saying, has sort of combined the two of good taste and probable health benefits there. So I'm excited about the 5 ways, and as you say, can't drink enough tea. So I turn over to you a little bit, Dr. Lee.
Yeah, well, so I'm a medical doctor and a scientist, and I have been involved for many years trying to develop better treatments through biotechnology for diseases like cancer, complications of diabetes, and even vision loss, blindness. And we've been remarkably successful. In fact, there's now 41 FDA approved treatments that we've been deeply involved with. And it's a real privilege and a sort of a badge of honor to have contributed to new medical treatments. But what got me into food was the fact that I realized that we were treating diseases after the horse was out of the barn. And I thought there was an opportunity, a great opportunity, to be able to prevent disease in the first place. Right. And when you're talking about prevention, you really can't talk about drugs or medicines. They're expensive, they have side effects, they need a prescription, and it's not as accessible worldwide. But what you can talk about is food and beverage. I'm using food sort of in a sort of a big frame term. And what's wonderful in my work is that many foods, more than 200 foods, But I think first among equals, I discovered through my own research is tea. And what does tea do? Tea helps our body's hardwired self defenses resist disease. So when we're born, when we are formed in our mom's wombs, the day we're born, our health defense systems hardwired are fighting to for our health. They help
Oh,
us
fun.
resist disease. And the question isn't, why do we get a disease? It's actually, why don't we get disease more often? And the reason and the answer to that question is because our health defenses are really, really raring to go. What are those health defenses? Angiogenesis, our circulation, our blood vessels, our stem cells regeneration, our microbiome, our healthy gut bacteria, our DNA, which also protects us from the environment, and our immune system. These are the 5 health defense systems that we are born with. And if we have environmental assaults from ultraviolet radiation, sunburn, fumes, pollution, all these things that we're seeing, radon, all these things that can affect our health, chemicals that we inadvertently eat, they actually take down our health defenses. And what we're looking for, and this is really where tea comes in, are foods that we love, we enjoy, that really mean something to us because they bring us joy and pleasure and satisfaction, that elevate our body's health defense systems. And tea is first among equals. I always have a cup with me when I try to go on. So it's not a clear cup, but it's something I have literally at my side.
Well, there are lots of things. You know, the original way tea was drunk back in the days was as a health.
Medicinal.
It was well, not medicinal, but it was it
it
fell
was.
into the emperor's cup, and they thought it protected them, and I guess you'd call it medicinal, protective medicinal, and so it has a many thousand-year history from China on with that. So and there's been lots of studies, as you know, right, especially the green teas.
Absolutely. I mean, tea comes from a plant, and we know that plant-based foods are good for our health. That's now almost universally recognized. And the leaf of the tea, which is what we steep, and you're going to show us this, Mike. Nobody does it better than you. But from a sort of researcher's perspective, there are thousands of natural chemicals. We call them bioactives because they interact with our biology. And some of the compounds that are natural chemicals are like catechins, gallic acid, theanine, and theaflavins, and they all wind up in a cup of tea when you brew it. And some of the amazing things that have been shown by research is that drinking tea actually can help prevent our cells from aging. So it's even has I'm sure the emperor didn't have the science, but appreciated the anti-aging properties of tea. It prevents our telomeres from shortening. So our cells stay younger, slow down cellular aging. There's a polyphenol. Everybody talks about polyphenols. I like to be specific. So the polyphenol that has been best studied in tea is called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG, and green tea has a lot of it because it's closest to what comes off the tea plant. And then everything from that, all teas come from that downstream in terms of how they're prepared. But green tea has, as much as 16 times the EGCG than some of the more processed or handled teas. And one of my favorite things to talk about EGCG is that I did research on this with the National Cancer Institute, is if you take tea and you put it into the same system that is growing blood vessels that would feed a cancer. Cancers are harmless if they can't get a blood supply. And if you put tea in that system, the blood vessels that would feed a tumor cannot grow. It takes them right apart, prevents new ones from growing. And so people say, well, that's really amazing. Was it hot tea or cold tea? Well, in the research lab, we've got to
That's really
use
amazing.
cold
Yeah.
tea. We use cold tea, and so obviously you wouldn't pour hot tea into a dish. You'd cook everything. So this goes to show that the hot tea, which is where it started, and then we had to chill the tea in the refrigerator in a glass pitcher. We turned the hot tea into iced tea, and the next day when it was cold, we then tested it in the lab. So this shows that this anti-angiogenic cancer-starving property of tea, the EGCG, is present in both the hot tea and preserved through, from the steeping, but also preserved in the refrigeration and cooling, and still works when it's cold. So I think that the good news there is a hot tea, iced tea, it all works. It actually helps our circulation. It's been shown in the lab to help fight cancer growth. Other studies have shown lowers blood pressure, helps your blood cholesterol, helps your immune system. It's got antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. And one of the things that I always say is, show me the evidence. Well, there's been clinical studies involving people showing that drinking 2 to 3 cups of green tea a day is associated with more than a 40% reduction in the risk of developing colon cancer. So another reason to really
She's got colon
embrace
cancer
the
in her
benefits of
family.
Well, that's a good reason for everyone to enjoy it. It's just and by the way, it makes total sense, right? We're pouring something into our intestines that's going to make its trip all the way through us, and so it's protecting our gut as well.
Well, it's amazing, Dr. Lee, is that EGCG that you were talking about, that's a prized thing, so that's what drives the price of tea up, because that adds the great flavors. And then as the season goes on, the EGCGs are converted into other chemicals, which are other molecules, which are good, but that's what makes the great teas taste good, is the EGCGs.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you've got a whole bunch of these interesting teas in front of us.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned green tea here, so I thought I'd make some green tea so people can see, because I know loose tea is the best way to do it, and it then cuts down packaging. So I'm going to put 2 spoons in here. This is a perfect teaspoon. And you may understand, why is it called a teaspoon? Because we use it with tea. Could I use less than boiling water, 175? Thank you. And so it's pretty easy to drink loose tea, isn't it, Mom?
Well, tell them about the less than boiling water.
Oh, we have to, for green tea, we use less than boiling water.
Yeah, that's important.
Because, yes, that's 175 degrees. And that's why I have my mother, is to help me out when I make mistakes.
And not for as long a steeping period.
Right, 3 minutes and 100, yes. Less heat, less time, Mom, than boiling water, and 5 minutes, which is what we recommend for that. So thank you very much.
Think
thank
nothing
you.
of it.
So I then have the timer, as we said, and we got it for 3 minutes. Oh, you have a timer too, so we have 2 timers. Excellent. So then it's pretty easy to drink loose tea.
Loose tea. Mm-hmm.
Do you drink loose tea then, Doctor?
I drink tea anyway. I can get it, but I grew up drinking loose leaf tea, and I kind of like loose leaf tea, because I know when the tea is kind of settled to the bottom, I don't have to worry about it floating around. But I can also control the strength of the tea that way, and so it gives me control.
Mm-hmm. So
and sometimes
I really. We could go on to the.
Oh, I was just going to say, and sometimes I like a really strong cup of tea, and sometimes I like a lighter cup of tea, and that's why having tea leaves, the loose leaf tea, is great. On the other hand, if you have a tea in a bag or a sachet, you can also just pull the bag or sachet out. The one little tip that I'll tell you from the health and polyphenol perspective is, if you're using tea that's in its own bag or sachet, you want to dunk that tea periodically while it's steeping, because that action will actually allow the natural healthy chemicals, the EGCG, to come out into the water better.
Mm-hmm. Huh. Good point. Good point. While we're brewing this, did you want to talk about the oolongs at all? What the benefits for those?
Well, so oolong tea, a lot of people don't realize, has a lot of the same healthful property of green tea. And so whatever you're hearing about green tea may have a little stronger potency or effect, but I want people to remember oolong is a different flavor along the continuum of green tea. And many people will be familiar with oolong tea because it's the kind of tea that often you get served in a Chinese restaurant. Now, the free tea you get is usually not a high quality tea, but it's perfectly drinkable. but there are some very special kinds of oolong tea, which is a little more brown in color, but it's got a nice rounded flavor to it. I mean, you are really the tea meister, and all I wanted to be able to communicate is that don't be afraid of oolong. It is got a lot of the research that shows it's also good as green tea. It's just got it's a different style of the tea. But what do you know? You know a lot more about the ins and
Absolutely.
outs of the tea.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a semi-oxidized tea. So green tea, they fix it green where they use just like with say asparagus, where it's either steamed or it's put in a fry and sautéed, if you will. But oolong is slightly damaged, so it's like those. You might say it's like a apple that you've cut and it's just started to turn. Oh, there's my timer.
Time to
It's
drink
just
it up.
started to turn. See, that was pretty easy, right? It's just started to turn. So the oolongs are semi-oxidized, and as you say, it's a whole continuum where you got the lighter ones. This is a Alisan is from Taiwan, and this happens to be from Taiwan too. And this would be one that one might find in a Chinese restaurant, the Formosa oolong. Now we always include that in the Earl Grey, which is the most popular flavored tea that's out there. So that's a tea that has a little bit of bergamot in it. So that citrus is supposed to be good for you too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Earl Grey is really near and dear to my research heart because thanks to Harney and Sons, had done this collaboration at my nonprofit organization, the Angiogenesis Foundation, where we studied the anti-angiogenic cancer-starving properties of tea. And we had all assumed that, the things that people have said that Japanese tea would be the strongest and then maybe the Chinese green tea. And nobody ever thought that Earl Grey would have any power at all. In fact, the reason that I was part of the design of this experiment was research. We chose Earl Grey because we thought it was going to flunk the test. And little did we know that the Earl Grey won the gold in the competition. It actually blew away both Japanese and
Isn't
Chinese
that
green
amazing?
teas. And it may be the
Oh,
bergamot
that's amazing.
that's part of it. It was so amazing. But then to beat the Earl Grey, we had mixed Japanese sencha and Chinese jasmine tea, and then bam, that then took the lead and won the race. So again, we discovered something with the help of Harney and Sons about tea itself, using just regular tea, putting things together, and then using the power of research to help us understand something that's so delicious that we'd like to drink. Now we even have more appreciation of it.
Right. Well, I learned from an old German tea master that he said only buy tea that makes you smile,
Smile.
and
Yes.
and some of that is because it has more of the natural components, more of the sugars. Because when you think about it, tea, we're drinking the sun because the
That's a
sun's
lovely way to
energy
put
comes
it.
down to the leaves, and then it's translated into the sugars for the tea plant. It doesn't grow tea just for you and me, Dr. Lee, and my mom, but
Yeah.
it's done it for itself. And so we only buy teas that make us smile. So that's I think one thing. Even the Earl Grey has got a lovely base of teas with it.
Well, the interesting thing is that the reigning thought was that black teas, dark teas, are highly oxidized, and that oxidation process would naturally destroy useful chemicals. But obviously, that's not the case. And obviously, you can also add a flavor to the tea, like with bergamot, which is part of the tradition of Earl Grey. What's the history of Earl Grey? Who's Earl, and why is it
Well,
Grey?
Earl Grey, it turns out the original Earl Grey was a British general that was during the Revolutionary War, came over and did so many good things that King George III made him hereditary Earl. So the good things you and I may not think were so good today, but back then the king was very happy with his work. So he became the Earl Grey. The second Earl Grey was the prime minister under Queen Victoria. And so people like to pay homage to him, and so they named the tea after the prime minister.
Oh,
So that's why that's where
that's a
it's
great
from.
story. Like I love those little nuggets that help us understand the background to what we're doing. By the way, I meant to ask you this. The teaspoon that you were using, is that truly where the name teaspoon came from? They used it to stir tea or mix tea?
Well, now you may have taken me outside my
Your historical
historical,
background.
but my father would say yes. Right? We would just say
We
yes.
can't argue with him, so that's fine.
There we go. Well, John's told me yes.
Well, then he must.
So yes, I think we'll
then
say
it
it
must
was.
be.
It must be. But it's easy to make loose tea. So we have, like, you can get this or we have the permanent tea filter here. It's hard to open it, but the box, once you open it, is this could go right in your mug. And then we also have these paper things, which you just put a spoon or two of tea in there. And you would put that in your mug.
You make your own tea bag.
You make your own tea bag.
Oh,
and then
that's
you put it in
great.
your mug. So that we have different things, ways.
Yeah, this is great.
So there's different ways
great.
to make loose tea,
turn it over.
and we just wanted to show people in the States often avoid making loose tea. But as you know,
I love that.
it can be good.
Where do you get your own tea bag envelopes? Where do you get that?
Oh, that's it's a German company that makes also this permanent filter here.
I love the idea that there are the tea is tea, but there are different ways that you can actually
That's great.
brew it and steep it. And that tea bag thing, I've actually never done that. I'd love to.
Well, I'll make sure you get a chance to do that.
Oh yeah, I would love to do that. It's a great idea.
No, it's so easy.
And then you just dump that in the thing.
Excellent.
And
Excellent.
that's biodegradable,
Of course.
of course.
Oh, Harney at Harney.com. We'll have yes, you'll be able to get the teas as part of the follow-up later on.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'm just the researcher here, and the doctor trying to share with you guys and the viewers that you don't have to just have one little thing of tea that you haven't tried in years sitting in your pantry, but look at what John and Elise are surrounded by. This sort of the whole series of different types of teas sealing the floor. They all come from the same plant, but they have slightly different tastes. And it's kind of like the connoisseurship of wine is that to the uninitiated.
Exactly.
To the uninitiated, all red wine tastes the same. But if you start to drink it more, you start to realize how refined and different each wine is. Same thing as tea. Same thing would be for cheese. People that don't, oh, it's all the same. No, they're very distinctive. And I think that speaks to this, the heritage and ancient art of tea drinking to match the ancient revered agriculture of growing tea. So this is, something that I know has been at the heart of Harney and Sons. You guys not only provide the highest quality of teas, but you're actively part of the whole process of making sure from the grower to, the people that have it put in their cup, that it's something that you have a hand in sort of the entire process, and you're familiar with the whole thing of what's actually going on. And that's important to somebody like me who cares about the quality of the tea that I drink.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Lee, is there more questions you think that I should answer or we should answer about tea?
The only thing I wanted to, I thought maybe I would ask you a question and you can ask it back to me, and I guarantee I'll give you a different answer. But the question I'm going to ask you that you'll ask back to me is, how much tea do you think somebody should drink?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm ready for that one too. Okay. So, Dr. Lee, how much tea should someone drink a day?
I asked you first. What's your answer? How much?
Oh, well,
He asked you, right?
oh, you asked me. Okay. Well, I think that we should drink 3 to 4 of these.
Wow, that's an Alice in Wonderland cup.
It's Alice, and it's a lot to drink. Luckily, there's a hole in it, so it's less to drink.
Well, I want to say
How much do you drink, Mother?
I
Yes.
drink a lot of tea, but I drink a different tea at different times of the day. And I
Really?
think that's part of the joy of it, that I can have a sencha or I can have a dragon pearl in the morning, and then I can switch to something maybe a little flavored or an oolong. I always love the oolongs when I go for lunch. And then during the afternoon, they've fooled around with
What
some different flavors.
What does your daughter drink
Oh,
in the morning?
she drinks
Wedding.
wedding
See,
tea.
I'm here for something.
Wedding tea, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
And of course,
That's a white tea.
the Paris, which was for Michael's wife Brigitte, a Parisienne, right? That is one of our most popular teas, but that's a black flavored, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's got Earl Grey in it too. So
And I know it's so interesting, you know, that the Earl Grey fits into
yeah.
some of those blends.
Yes, that's true.
But, and then of course, though, I do finish the evening with chamomile.
Which is good for you,
Ah,
right?
yes, chamomile is very good for you. It actually truly does calm the mind and the body and the soul. And it also has some good properties for your gut health. So then when you're sleeping at night, it's taking care of your healthy gut bacteria as well. I can only think that your love of tea, Elise, contributes to the type of healthy aging and beauty that you've actually been able to have after all these years. You look exactly the same to me as when I first met you. So it's wonderful that you can be any age. You could be a teenager. You could be, I mean, like young kids are starting to really come on to tea as well. And I think that this is something that tea is something you can drink your whole life, and that's the other
Yes.
wonderful thing.
Yes, that's true.
Well, I think that before our connection with you, we certainly enjoyed tea, being introduced to it by Stanley Mason and all of that. I mean, we really did enjoy tea, but it was only after we started working with you that I realized the health benefits of tea. So all I can say is I'm still here.
And thank you.
Well, and thank goodness for that. But so I love the fact that you talked about the different times of the day. Let me share a little bit about the different types of diseases that tea has been shown through research to be protective of, and how much you need to drink. And so we talked about the fact that for colon cancer, research has shown that drinking 2 to 3 cups of green tea causes a substantial reduction of about 40-some%. Cardiovascular disease, heart disease, which in cardiovascular is all the blood vessels in our body, stroke, brain, heart attack. 4 cups of tea a day, which I easily drink 4 cups of tea a day, has been shown to substantially lower the risk of heart disease. Same amount dose for lowering the risk of lupus, which is an autoimmune inflammatory disease, calming the immune system down to the right size.
Oh,
And some of the things that really surprised me, by lowering inflammation without compromising our immunity against bacteria and viruses, about 4 to 5 cups a day has been shown to be beneficial to protect against multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease, and rheumatoid arthritis as well. So these are the common diseases. But look, we're actually in a new era, right? Like this is, about a year and a half ago, the entire world changed when we had this pandemic kind of spring out of nowhere and catch almost all of us unawares. And I can tell you, one of the first things I was involved with was research looking at diet and health. And so a very early study going back to the spring of the pandemic examined 900 people in China, I think near the Wuhan area where all this started, and they were tracking people head to toe, blood tests, saliva, everything else. These are not sick people, well, healthy people, 900 healthy people as the pandemic was breaking out. And they measured all these different factors. They looked at their stool for their microbiome. They looked at what healthy gut bacteria. They looked at blood tests to see what kind of cytokines or body chemicals are being produced. And of course, they looked at whether or not people got COVID or not. And something that instantly caught my eye was that the differences between people who got COVID and didn't get COVID in this one study was linked to whether or not they had a natural chemical that the body makes called interferon gamma. So people who had more interferon gamma didn't get COVID, and people who had more interferon gamma had a very different kind of gut bacteria. They had very specific one bacteria called ruminococcus. Okay, all I can tell you is that the people who didn't get COVID had this, and the people who did get COVID didn't have that bacteria. And then they asked people what they ate, and they were looking at all the what did they eat, what did they eat and drink, and guess what popped up? The people who had the ruminococcus, the good healthy gut bacteria that had the interferon gamma that wound up not getting COVID in Wuhan, China, where all this started, were people who drank green tea and black tea, about 2 cups a day. And so again, this is something that told me it's time to do more research, even more research into the benefits, protective benefits of tea. I am not saying by any means that tea is a substitute for other protective measures.
It's amazing.
You can't ignore it. No.
That's right. The fact of the matter is that you can't ignore science. You can't ignore research. And what research does is it gives us the reason to do more studies and to further enjoy what it is that we already enjoy. And I think when it comes to tea, it's a no-brainer that we should study it more, we should drink it more, we should enjoy it more. And that's what you're all about here. Are there any other things that you want to show with all that wonderful stuff in front of you?
Well, we talked about how to make tea. We talked about the different types of tea. We didn't show any white tea, Mother, but we did mention it in wedding.
Right.
And that's the baby of the tea plant. So oftentimes that has a very concentrated selection of things that one would find the precursors of tea. And the EGCGs are better in the spring tea, as I mentioned, but they're still, as they convert into theorubicins, and theaflavins, they then serve a different purpose. They have a different way of working the magic. But however you like tea, as you say, 4 cups is not a bad way to go through life. And as long as it's good tea that makes you smile, I think that's pretty good.
Well, 4
Exactly.
cups is a snap.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Lee, this has been an honor to see you.
It is.
Even from a distance. But one day we'll see you in real life. But it's been great, and we are so happy to be associated with you. And over the years,
it's a great privilege.
Yes, it's a great privilege.
Great privilege.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
The feeling is
Thank
mutual.
you. God bless.
I enjoy sharing my passion for tea as medicine, but also tea as pleasure. And it is something that I speak very authentically about because it's been part of my life, and I will continue to drink Harney teas because I enjoy it so much.
Great. We raise our
you.
cup to you. Thank you.
Thank you.